Welcome to What's New in Secondary Math Curriculum, Video 2. You know that in this video we will be talking about the changes to the secondary math curriculum in regard to additional TEKS-based support for daily lessons. That means that we're really going to focus on the TEKS. We want a very tight curriculum. And by this I mean we want to make sure we're focused on what 6th graders are expected to know in math. It is very easy to stray from our lane. And one of the easiest ways to do that is by using numbers that are maybe too difficult. If we're asking students to perform operations with rational numbers, do they need to be able to add something like 4/7 plus 5/9? Or is 3/4 plus 5/6 sufficient for a 6th grader? It's that kind of thing. And so we have studied the TEKS and we have studied the STAR questions to try to figure out exactly what it is the state expects. And we want to make sure that that is where we focus our time. I think most teachers would agree that we never have enough time to teach everything we need to teach as well as we want to teach it. So if we focus our time on what is truly expected of 6th graders, hopefully we can see them perform even better on those skills. And in order to do that, we have multiple resources for this daily instruction. Of course, there's the textbook, but we have 3 other resources for our on-level students, plus an additional resource for our Tier 2 students. And we're going to hopefully make those more accessible to you so that it's easier for you to use all of the different things that we have available. So let's go ahead and take a look at the curriculum to see what's different. Here we are back on the 6th grade on-level math page. And as we saw before, when you click on the Scope and Sequence button, here's our Scope and Sequence. And like I said, it probably looks very familiar. The first difference you might notice is that it is blue. Apparently the district assigns different colors to the different content areas, and math is blue. And if you know me, you know that makes me very happy because I like blue. So it is blue partially for that reason, but also because we wanted it to be a visual cue to you. When you open a document, if it's purple, you know you're looking at the old document. But if it's blue, you know that you're in the new one. Other things that are very similar are the curriculum preview dates. These are listed here for you. The units are listed along with the number of days, approximate number of days we think that unit will take. We have the topic of the unit, and then also the TEKS are listed. We're also listing the dates of the district exams, CBA and DBA. So that's all still there just like it always has been. Now, one thing that is a little different is we've added in the dates of the 6 weeks. We thought that might be kind of helpful to you. You know, if you look here and the DBA is administered on November 17th, then you look here and see, oh, well, those 6 weeks begins on November 16th. That's useful to me. It kind of helps me put that in its place, knowing, oh, okay, so the DBA is on day 2 of the third 6 weeks. So that's one little change. Another difference is in the way we numbered the units. If you remember in the past, this would be Unit 1-1, 1-2, and 1-3 for first 6 weeks, Units 1, 2, and 3. That made sense, but it did get a little bit confusing when you had a unit like 3 here. That would be called Unit 1-3, and then the same unit here is called Unit 2-1. So we thought, let's just number them numerically, just go in order, and so you'll see that they're numbered all the way through Unit 14. So we just thought that would be a little bit simpler. Another change you might notice is, again, just a little visual cue. With a unit like Unit 3, when it does continue into the second 6 weeks, we did not list the TEKS out again a second time, just kind of to remind you, oh, that's right, this one has already been started up here, and those are the TEKS that are in that unit. There is one other change that I would like to tell you about while we are here, and that is that you will notice you have more units than you have in the past. And what we did was we took the statistics unit that was really very lengthy, and we split it into 2 parts. We thought that 2 shorter units would be better than the 1 longer unit. So now students will learn to represent and interpret data, and then they will learn to summarize the data in 2 separate units with 2 separate summative assessments. So those are really the changes that you will see to your Scope and Sequence. Now let's go ahead and look at the units and see what we've got. All right, we're going to look at Unit 1. And again, the beginning probably looks very familiar. We start out with the vocabulary, and then also on the first page we have the ELPS and the mathematical process standards. Now you may remember in the previous curriculum there were a lot of Word documents and PDF documents embedded in the curriculum. Well, now those are links instead. So anytime you see something underlined, that's a link. And then you could open this document if you would choose to look at the standards for our ELPS students. And of course, remember, the mathematical process standards are just part of everything that we do. So if you were to go back and check this list, you should find that you are using all of these things or doing all of these things on a regular basis. Now, vertical alignment, this page is also familiar. Remember that this center column, this is our lane. This is what you are expected to teach. But we know sometimes it's helpful to know what students did before. For example, here, they're locating, comparing, and ordering integers and rational numbers on a number line. Well, last year they did compare and order decimals, but now we've really brought in the integers, right? And we may have all the different rational numbers mixed up. We also might like to look and see what will our students be expected to do next year. What do they need to be prepared for when they leave our class? And that is what the right column tells us. So here they're classifying whole numbers, integers, and rational numbers. Well, next year they're classifying all of the rational numbers, and the new set that's included is the natural numbers. So we want to make sure that they understand these three subsets very well, so that next year they can add in that fourth subset and understand what that is. So this is a useful page just to kind of guide your teaching, to know where your students are coming from and where they're going. Remember that the bold teaks are the readiness teaks, and the non-bold teaks are the supporting teaks. This next page is also probably familiar. These are the content standards descriptors. And in the left column first we have the teaks. And then we have a link. And this link will take us to the released STAR questions for 2015 and 2016. And those you can use with your students beginning on day one. Remember, the 2017, 18, and 19 STAR exams are reserved until after the DBA. So please do not use those with your students. Certainly use them for your own information. So this is the 2016 STAR question for 6-2A. Here's the 2015 question. And then when you keep scrolling, you'll find some other questions. And these were written by teachers back when the TEKS were brand new. Some of these are great questions that would be very useful for you and your students. But be sure to look at them carefully, because when the TEKS first came out, we didn't necessarily fully understand what the expectations were. The word rigor was thrown around a lot, and sometimes these questions are a little too rigorous for our 6th grade students, or sometimes they deviated from the TEKS a little bit. So do check those out carefully before you decide to use them. Like I said, some are fantastic, but just look at them carefully. So those are available to you, 2015 and 2016 STAR questions. And then here on the right side are the content standards descriptors. And this is where we have tried to figure out exactly what is intended by the TEKS. You know, some of the TEKS are really very general, and it can be hard to determine exactly what all is included in that. What does the state really expect from that? So that is where the content standard descriptors come in and help you know exactly how they need to be able to show that they understand everything within this TEKS. Now, this is something that Kristen and I will be working to update this year. These, again, were written back when the TEKS were brand new, before we fully knew what to expect. So as you read through the content standard descriptors, if you come across something and you think, you know, I just don't think that fits within the scope of 6th grade math, then trust your judgment. You're probably right about that. So use these. They are very helpful, but just use them carefully as Kristen and I are working to update them this year. Now, with all that said, 6th grade Unit 1 has been updated, so you can certainly trust everything that is here. But as you move on to Units 2 and throughout the rest of the year, you may very well be ahead of us in our revisions, so just use those carefully. And so we have all of the same materials for each of the TEKS, again remembering that the bold TEKS are the readiness TEKS. And when you get here to the last page of the document, this is where things really look different. You'll remember in the previous curriculum you would find a section with bullet points, and each bullet point was a lesson for a different day. Well, that's what we have here, in addition to several of those embedded or formally embedded resources. So we have our vocabulary just like we had before, but now it's a link, and when you click on that, you go into your visual vocabulary with the word definition and example. So that's right there for you. We also have from McGraw-Hill these ELL resources, and these are grouped by unit, and they can be really helpful as you're looking for different ways to work with those ELL students. So be sure to take a look at these. There's some great ideas in there. And also from McGraw-Hill, additional support for on-level learners. And here you'll see things for different learning styles, such as your visual spatial learners or kinesthetic learners, whatever. So just some great ideas here that you may not use exactly what this page says, but it may spark an idea to help you with some more engaging activities with your students. And then finally, the RTI support. This was one of the pages within the curriculum in the past, and now we've linked it as its own separate page. It is organized by TEKS. Each row is a different TEKS. And column 1 is Tier 1. These are the students that are just in your regular on-level class who might need a little extra support. You manage a lot of that with your seating arrangement and with your questioning and so forth. But here are a few resources that you might also use for them. For example, 6-2A, if you look at McGraw-Hill Chapter 1, Lesson 5, then there's a reteach page, extra practice, so forth, that you might use with those struggling students. Now, Tier 2 students, these are the ones that we're pulling for small group instruction, or maybe an interventionist is working with them or something like that. These are the students who really need some extra help in math, and that is what the Think Up Math resources are for. These are specifically for the Tier 2 students. Remember, the Teacher's Edition is excellent for every teacher to use as you are determining how to teach and what to teach with those TEKS and so forth. But using the actual student books, that is reserved for your Tier 2 students. And some teachers have gone through and helped us choose the very best parts of those units to work with the particular TEKS. There's way too much to do everything. But if you look at 6-2A, we can see here that's Think Up Math Unit 1. And some teachers have said, you know what, these pages right here provide some really great things that would be good for those Tier 2 students. So you guys don't have to dig through everything and find the best stuff. That's already been done for you. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier and save you some time in planning your lessons for those students. All right, so those are the support pieces here at the top. Here is our calendar, and this is very much like the calendars that we used last year, so these will be familiar. Remember, each color is a different unit. And this first unit in 6th grade math is probably the longest one of the year. It has a lot of TEKS in it. But the most important change you'll notice is that while we still have the TEKS on each day, just like we did last year the days were labeled by a lesson in the textbook, and that is no longer the case. Now it is labeled according to which part of that TEKS we're teaching that day. Now, 6-2A is simply the visual representation of these subsets of numbers. That's just one day. 6-2B, though, we're going to teach numbers opposites and number lines on one day, and then we will bring absolute value into the discussion the next day. So by looking at this, you can see these are all the parts of 6-2B that I need to make sure my students understand. And then you move on into the other TEKS in the unit. So we have really tried to guide you and help you know exactly what you need to teach by listing these as the lessons for the day. Now, we are not in any way dictating exactly what you're going to do on each day. You will use your own experience. You will take your students' current understanding into account, and you will adjust as you need to adjust. But do know that we put a lot of thought into the sequence we've presented here. This is the way that we feel like the TEKS fit together the best, and the way that we think that the learning will be most accessible to students so that on each day they are ready for what is being taught that day. So this is a starting point for you, and we hope that you will use it and then mold it as you need to fit the needs of your class. Now, there is still a great deal of flexibility. You know, maybe your students are just really doing well, they came in well prepared, and maybe you get to the CFA a little earlier than August 25th. That's great. Or maybe you have an assembly and you're a little bit behind what this calendar has on it, and you don't get to the CFA until the 26th or the 27th. That's fine. This is just, like I said, a starting point. It is something that you will then work with to make it work with your students. We have also reserved a full day for the review and a full day for the unit test. That may not be the way you like to teach. Maybe you like to review as you go along. So that is fine as well. You might assign parts of the review on each day of this week and then you're still continuing to instruct on September 3rd before you take the assessment on the 4th. You can certainly use your own preferences to make this work in your classroom. But this is a starting point. We hope it's useful. And as always, we have the previews listed on the calendar. We'll have the district exams listed when we get to those and so forth. So that is your calendar. Familiar, slightly new. Also the TEKS. Remember at each preview last year we passed out a listing of all of the TEKS in the 6 weeks split up by unit. Well, we have the same thing attached to your curriculum, but now it's just by unit. It's linked to the unit in which it fits. And this is a really nice way to look at the TEKS because you can see this family of TEKS, 6.2. Here's the readiness TEKS, and then it has all of these supporting TEKS under it. Well, these are the building blocks that you need to use to help your students be successful with this readiness TEKS up here. So just seeing it laid out in this format can be really, I think, eye-opening as you're thinking about how to go through and teach all of the concepts in this unit. And next we move on to the actual days. So day 1 of the unit, we're teaching 6.2a. That is the visual representation of whole numbers, integers, and rational numbers. Day 2 is 6.2b, numbers, opposites, and number lines. 3, 6.2b still, but absolute value. So you recognize this. This is exactly what was on the calendar. So these fit together perfectly. We have also written out the TEKS on each day, so you don't have to go somewhere and look it up. It's right there for you. And the content standards descriptors. Here's where we're saying, as you're teaching the visual representation of whole numbers, integers, and rational numbers, that is 6.2a content descriptors 1 through 5. So here we've listed 1 through 5. These are the things that you want to make sure that you're covering on that day. These are the individual specific little pieces of the TEKS that make up the full TEKS, and these are the things that you're covering on day 1 of that unit. Now, like I said, this is under construction. We are still working on this. So when you go to Unit 2, this is probably going to be blank. Now, another thing you'll find here is the HEB ISD resources. And this shows you exactly what you have that you can use to teach this concept. There's an activity in engaging math that you could use. There are several activities in the Air book that you can choose from. And there are also some pages in the textbook. So these are the different choices you have in what you do in your classroom that day to teach this concept to your students. Now, in addition to the HEB ISD resources page, we're also adding in some activities provided by teachers, or one that I'm going to show you today was written by Kristen, which is a great activity. So you're going to find just some different things like this one, which is something that you might have students working on independently when you pull a small group for instruction. So they can just work and determine whether these statements are true or false. Now let's look at this one. This is someone that Kristen has provided, and it's something that you would do with the whole group. Maybe it's the way you would start the lesson every day. It's something that you would do throughout the unit, not just on one particular day. And it's helping students really understand what these integers mean. So I'm not going to go through the whole activity, but the general idea is that you're looking at these different types of numbers and thinking about what they really are. Altitude is a good example. So when a student has a picture of a submarine, is that something that's going to, when you're talking about the altitude, would that be on the left side of 0 or on the right side of 0? What about an airplane? Left side or right side of 0? Okay, now that airplane is on the right side of 0, and this turtle is probably on the right side of 0, but which one is closer to 0, the airplane or the turtle? All right, so lots of things you can do with that, and you can see that she's provided a lot of different types of numbers, elevators and escalators, football. Oh, that's great for positives and negatives, and it'll be football season. If football season happens, it'll be football season while you're teaching this. So lots of different ideas, and I'm sure there are many more that you guys could think of that we could add to this as well. So as you're looking through the curriculum, be watching out for these extra little things added in. There's some really rich activities that you can use for small groups or for independent practice or whatever. So then as you move on through the curriculum, you will see the CFAs are listed on their days. You've got your review, you've got your assessment. So that is our daily curriculum. Like I said, it's a lot of the same stuff, but it is definitely focused on the TEKS rather than on a textbook. And we've really tried to make all of these different resources very easy for you to access so that you can use lots of different things with your students. All right, video 3 coming up, that will be looking at the assessments. So I will see you in video 3.